In the sweltering heart of the Wild West, few names struck fear into the hearts of travelers as profoundly as the Blackthorn Gang. Led by the cunning and ruthless outlaw Gideon Blackthorn, this notorious crew had earned infamy through a series of meticulously orchestrated heists. From train robberies to safecracking in the dead of night, their audacity knew no bounds. Each successful job seemed to only bolster their bravado, setting the stage for their most daring endeavor yet, an ambush at Vulture Pass. Vulture Pass, with its jagged cliffs and treacherous terrain, provided the perfect backdrop for the gang's insidious plan. They lay in wait, hidden amongst the outcroppings and scrub brush, eyes sharp like hawks circling prey. The stagecoach, loaded with $40,000 in gold, a fortune by any standard, rumbled steadily towards them, oblivious to the danger lurking just beyond the horizon. It was a day that promised either riches or ruin for those aboard. As the coach neared, the gang sprang into action with breathtaking precision. Gunshots rang out, echoing against the canyon walls as they overwhelmed the driver and forced the horse team to a screeching halt. The sound was thunderous, a cacophony that shattered the desert tranquility but was sweet music to the eager ears of the Blackthorn Gang. Every member played their role seamlessly, each movement choreographed over years of violent experience. In moments that seemed to stretch for eternity, chaos erupted as they claimed their prize and extinguished all witnesses' chance of survival. Except one. Cass Whitaker, a spirited rancher's daughter disguised as a boy, lay concealed beneath a threadbare canvas tarp. A fierce determination burned within her despite overwhelming fear. She had ventured out that day not to witness crime, but to challenge the masculine world surrounding her family's ranch. Now, having witnessed unspeakable violence, she understood her fate if discovered, death without hesitation. With each gunshot she heard reverberating in her mind, Cass's heart hardened. This was no longer merely about survival, it was about revenge. The fire ignited within her as she lay hidden while watching men rob lives and futures with cold indifference. She knew she couldn't return home unchanged. She wouldn't allow these killers to walk free. The desert stretched endlessly before her, but in her injured state and with a stolen revolver at her side, Cass Whitaker felt renewed. She would pursue them relentlessly until every man in the Blackthorn Gang regretted crossing her path. The stagecoach rolled forward, the creaking wheels echoing in the stillness of Vulture Pass, unaware of the lurking menace waiting in the shadows. The Blackthorn Gang had meticulously planned this heist, letting anticipation mix with adrenaline as they positioned themselves among the rugged cliffs. Gideon Blackthorn, with his keen eyes scanning the horizon, gestured subtly to his crew, each member poised and ready. With the sun beating down mercilessly, they watched the approaching stagecoach, its precious cargo worth more than most could dream. As the vehicle came around a bend, lined with loose stones and treacherous drops, a signal was given. The gang sprang into action, surprising the driver with a barrage of gunfire that shattered the stillness in an instant. The chaotic scene erupted, a thunderous symphony of gunshots and primal yells overtaking the world as the gang encircled their target like wolves descending on an unsuspecting herd. The driver, a weathered man with stooped shoulders and dirt-lined skin, barely had time to react before he was struck down. The brutality of the act sent a shudder through the silent landscape. One moment he had been navigating the dusty trail, and the next, life ebbed from him with unceremonious haste. A ripple of excitement surged through the Blackthorn Gang as they watched the body slump forward, lifeless against the leather reins, an effortless kill marking the beginning of their triumph. The horses whinnied in fright, skidding to a stop as the gang rushed forward. They tore open the coach doors with frenzied vigor, revealing crates packed tightly with shimmering gold bars, their prize shining brilliantly in the harsh sunlight. $40,000, one gang member shouted, eyes wide with avarice as he surveyed their bounty. They worked swiftly, each man seized crates with practiced efficiency, loading them onto their waiting horses even as chaos raged around them. In those fleeting moments, time seemed to stand still for Cass Whitaker, hidden beneath her canvas tarp. Beneath her disguise, her heart raced violently at the stark reality of violence before her. Her breaths quickened, barely making a sound as she witnessed this meticulously choreographed chaos unfold. The gang members exuded a confidence born from years of crime, their laughter mingled with hurried shouts launched toward one another. To them, this was just another job, the thrill almost intoxicating. With the gold secured, Gideon ordered a quick exit before any lawman could arrive. The gang melted back into the shadows like phantoms, leaving behind no trace of their malevolent deed other than a cold wind whispering through Vulture Pass. As they rode away, Cass felt bile rise in her throat. This was not just robbery, it was murder wrapped in greed. Constrained by fear yet fueled by anger, she knew the tableau she had witnessed would linger in her mind forever, igniting a hunger for vengeance that would not be easily extinguished. Cass Whitaker had always felt confined by the expectations placed upon her as a rancher's daughter. Growing up in the vast expanse of the plains, she longed for adventure and independence, attributes often reserved for men in a society that dictated her role. That morning, donned in boy's clothes, she had set out with the intention of trailblazing her own destiny, seeking out mischief rather than merely attending to chores at the family ranch. When she heard the distant rumble of the stagecoach, Cass felt a rush of excitement. Curious and emboldened by her disguise, she crept closer, hiding under the canvas tarp draped over a nearby wagon. Her heart raced as she anticipated a glimpse of the encounter, a rare glimpse into a world far removed from her sheltered life. But as the chaos unfolded before her, that excitement quickly transformed into terror. The gang emerged from the shadows like demons, their faces masked by the dust and heat of the day. Cass watched with wide eyes as gunfire shattered the peace of Vulture Pass, each shot tearing through her sense of safety like a lightning bolt. The violence was stark, visceral. The driver's sudden death sent an icy chill coursing through her veins. She felt helpless, rooted to her spot beneath the tarp as confusion turned to anger. How could anyone take a life so easily, so ruthlessly? Fury pulsed through her, igniting a need to act, to do something rather than remain a mere spectator in this grisly scene. She recalled stories told around the campfire, not just tales of brave heroes, but also of vengeful spirits that rose from despair. Cass envisioned herself as one of those spirits, fueled not by justice, but by deep-seated rage and an unwavering desire for retribution against those who had taken everything from her. Memories flooded her mind, the laughter of her family during simple meals, the way sunlight glinted off the fields they tended. Those memories quickly transformed into a vow, echoing like a battle cry. She would not allow these men to escape unscathed. Armed with a stolen revolver and an unbroken spirit, Cass emerged from under the tarp once they vanished, her heart still pounding with adrenaline, now bolstered by newfound determination. As she stumbled forward into the unforgiving desert, every step was filled with purpose. Cass Whitaker was no longer just a girl disguised as a boy. She was a force to be reckoned with, a young woman whose journey had just begun, fueled by vengeance and an unwavering resolve to confront the Blackthorn Gang. As the dust settled in Vulture Pass and the echoes of gunfire faded into the scorching desert air, Cass Whitaker knew she had to escape. Her heart raced, a cacophony of adrenaline and fear propelling her forward. Beneath her rugged disguise, she could feel the sting of the wound on her leg, a reminder that chaos had left its mark on her. The rough terrain was unforgiving, each step jarring against her injury, but the instinct to flee drove her onward. With trembling hands, she gripped the stolen revolver tightly. Its weight felt both foreign and empowering, a talisman of her determination to confront the men who had shattered her world. Each time she stumbled over a rock or tripped in the loose sand, panic clawed at her insides, urging her to move faster. She could not afford to look back, her life depended on it. Navigating through the harsh landscape, Cass felt vulnerable and exposed under the relentless sun. Sweat dripped down her brow as she sought refuge behind boulders and shrubs, ever aware that danger lurked just beyond sight. The echoes of laughter from the Blackthorn Gang haunted her thoughts, their confidence sickened her as much as their violence. She clenched her jaw, using that anger as fuel to push through. Desperation fueled Cass's movements as she maneuvered through cacti and rocky outcroppings, searching for any sign of water or shade. The sun climbed higher in the sky, its heat pressing down on her like a heavy blanket. With each movement, pain radiated from her injured leg, sharp and insistent, but she silenced it through sheer grit. Suddenly, Cass paused when she heard distant voices carried on the wind, gruff laughter mingling with banter that sent chills down her spine. Heart pounding in response, she ducked low behind a saguaro cactus, listening intently as they drew closer. Shadows danced over the desert floor while she struggled to control her breathing, every instinct screamed for caution. In that moment of vulnerability, Cass realized that desperation alone would not be enough for survival. She needed strategy. She took a deep breath and considered her options carefully, If they were to regroup after their heist, they might head toward one of their hideouts known only to them, and perhaps even to some local outlaws too. With renewed resolve coursing through her veins like fire, Cass decided it was time to move more deliberately through this landscape of peril. She would use this desert not merely as a barrier between herself and them, but as a path toward vengeance, every ounce of pain fueling an unbreakable spirit ready to confront those who had wronged her so utterly. As Cass Whitaker stumbled through the relentless desert, the initial shock of witnessing the Blackthorn Gang's brutal heist began to crystallize into something sharper, an unyielding desire for revenge. The adrenaline that had propelled her forward transformed, shifting from a desperate instinct to a calculated resolve. With every painful step, she could no longer view herself as merely a frightened witness. She was becoming a force of vengeance, fueled by a growing determination to hunt down each member of the gang that had stolen not just gold, but her sense of safety and purpose. Cass recalled the faces of the outlaws, their cruel laughter and dismissive arrogance. Those images burned in her mind, sharpening her focus. She envisioned their leader, Gideon Blackthorn, his dark eyes gleaming with malice as he ordered the murder of the driver without a second thought. It was that coldness that ignited a fire within her, compelling her to sketch their demise in her imagination. Each man had a weakness; she would exploit it. The desert stretched before her, vast and unforgiving, but Cass began to see it differently. It was no longer just a barren landscape filled with peril; it became a stage for her retaliation. With the stolen revolver tucked into her waistband and the remnants of courage clinging to her heart, Cass mapped out her strategy like a seasoned hunter preparing for the chase. She would track them down, learning their habits and anticipating their moves. Resources were scarce, and each passing hour under the blistering sun sapped her strength, but this only added urgency to her mission. She would need to gather information, perhaps find someone who might have seen the gang's escape route or learned of their hideouts. Her mind raced with possibilities, and she resolved to keep her ears open for whispers of their whereabouts among any travelers unfortunate enough to cross her path. As she pressed on through the arid expanse, Cass felt the weight of her resolve settle upon her shoulders like armor. She would no longer be the girl hidden beneath a tarp. She was transforming into something more, a woman who would confront her fears and take control of her destiny. Every ounce of pain and fear that surged within her was now intertwined with a singular purpose: to make each member of the Blackthorn Gang regret ever crossing paths with her. Fueled by an unbreakable spirit and sharpened by rage, Cass Whitaker embraced her new identity as both a survivor and avenger. She would not rest until justice was served, not through courtrooms or lawmen's orders, but through her own hands. Every bullet fired in retribution would speak volumes about the courage blossoming within her. The desert was vast and empty, but within its confines, Cass was no longer lost. She was found in purpose, ready to wage war against those who had wronged her. Cass Whitaker's resolve transformed the barren desert into her hunting ground as she began to track the Blackthorn Gang, one member at a time. Drawing on her experience as a rancher's daughter, she utilized her knowledge of the land, the ancient trails and hidden paths, to navigate through the unforgiving terrain. Each day she studied the shifting sun and the patterns of the wind, letting nature guide her as much as her heart guided her thirst for vengeance. She focused on the last remnants of the gang's trail after their brazen heist. Cass observed the loose gravel scattered in their wake, marking where horses had trodden heavily, leaving behind impressions that spoke volumes. A sense of purpose filled her with every footprint she deciphered. They were heading towards the abandoned silver mine rumored to be a favored hideout for outlaws in the area. As Cass ventured closer to their presumed location, she honed in on her instincts. She recalled tales told around campfires about how bandits operated. They became overconfident in their spoils, careless about guarding themselves after a big haul. With this knowledge fueling her strategy, she planned carefully, camouflaged and invisible, just as she had been beneath the tarp when witnessing their atrocity. Her days morphed into a series of calculated movements. Cass adopted a meticulous routine that involved watching from a distance during the day as she noted who went in and out of camp. Gideon Blackthorn's right-hand man first, then another gunman whose name she had overheard during their ambush, each prey becoming increasingly familiar to her. In between tracking movements, she used what little resources she had left, scraps of food scavenged from nature and water collected from dew-laden plants, to keep herself nourished and alert. Slowly but surely, Cass started assembling pieces for an inevitable confrontation, Each evening was filled with new plans formed under an unyielding sky. The first target would be an arrogant brute who often boasted about his exploits when he thought no one was listening. Cass had learned that he frequented a nearby watering hole at dusk, a perfect opportunity for an ambush. As twilight descended on one fateful day, Cass readied herself in hiding among the shadows created by gnarled trees and boulders. With every heartbeat resonating in rhythm with her burgeoning confidence, Cass felt herself become more than just a rancher's daughter or a frightened witness. She was transforming into a predator poised for action. This was not merely about revenge, it was about reclaiming who she was meant to be, a woman capable of fierce independence ready to make each member of the Blackthorn Gang regret their choices. She tightened her grip on the stolen revolver. It felt like an extension of herself now, a tool for anchoring justice to her very existence. With determination surging through her veins, Cass prepared to enact what would become not only retribution, but also liberation from fear's suffocating grasp, one outlaw at a time. As days turned into tense nights, Cass Whitaker began to track down individual members of the Blackthorn Gang, her heart pounding with both fear and determination. Her first encounter was not with the gang leader, but with one of his more arrogant subordinates, Jonah, a brash gunman known for boasting about his exploits and showing off his marksmanship. He often visited a dusty saloon on the outskirts of the town where he drank heavily and bragged about the gold they had stolen. Cass watched from a shadowy corner as Jonah regaled a group of equally raucous men with tales of their daring heist. The way he leaned back, confidence radiating from him, infuriated her. His arrogance was a chink in his armor, a glaring weakness she could exploit. As Jonah raised his glass to toast to their latest triumph, Cass slipped out of the saloon, plotting her next move. She needed to lure him away from prying eyes. Her plan unfolded under the cloak of night. She set up a makeshift trap near an old corral where she knew he liked to practice his shooting. Using her voice to mimic a distressed traveler, she called out for help just as Jonah left the saloon, drawn by the prospect of easy glory. When he arrived, Cass ambushed him, using the element of surprise to her advantage. With her revolver trained on him, she saw the realization dawn in his eyes: he was no longer in control. In that moment, Cass felt powerful. She confronted Jonah about the murder of the stagecoach driver, each accusation tightening around him like a noose. As her anger boiled over, she emptied her fury into every word spoken, but rather than pulling the trigger immediately, she decided to gather information instead. Jonah's bravado crumbled as he realized he was alone. His defenses fell away, and he spilled secrets about the gang's plans and whereabouts, terrified of facing the consequences of his actions. With Jonah dispatched, tied up and left for dead in the corral, Cass moved on to her next target, a sullen brute named Cole who had been known for his violent temper and lack of loyalty within the gang. She learned that he often wandered off alone to drown his sorrows in whiskey at an isolated campsite by a river, a perfect opportunity for another ambush. As she approached Cole's hideout, Cass felt a mixture of apprehension and resolve. This time would be different. She was prepared not just with her weapon, but with a sharpened mindset honed through her previous encounter. She would not allow fear to creep in. Instead, she embraced it as a tool to fortify her resolve. When she finally confronted Cole beneath the pale moonlight, she was no longer simply seeking revenge. She was reclaiming her power. Each encounter shaped Cass into a formidable opponent for those who had wronged her, intensifying her drive and clarity of purpose. The remaining members of the Blackthorn Gang would soon learn that their past misdeeds had awakened a force they could no longer ignore. With each confrontation, Cass transformed from victim to avenger, a young woman ready to unleash justice upon those who thought they were untouchable in their tyranny. As Cass Whitaker prepared for her next confrontation, an unsettling conflict brewed within her. The thrill of revenge was intoxicating, yet it was accompanied by an undercurrent of doubt that gnawed at her conscience. Each time she recalled the faces of the men who had robbed her of safety and murdered the stagecoach driver, a fire ignited in her heart. But as she approached each encounter, questions began to surface. Would avenging these wrongs truly bring her peace, or would it consume her entirely? The lines between justice and vengeance blurred in her mind. Cass often found herself reflecting on the stories she had heard growing up, tales of heroes who fought against evil and restored order. Yet, as she positioned herself as an avenger in those narratives, she grappled with the reality that there was no hero's reward waiting for her at the end of this path. Would killing these men transform her into a savior, or would it merely plunge her deeper into darkness? As Cass lay awake beneath the star-filled sky after dispatching Jonah, she replayed the moment over and over in her mind. The rush of power when he realized he was outmatched clashed with the cold realization that she had taken a step towards becoming one of them, an executioner devoid of mercy. She shivered at the thought, what if she lost herself amid this quest for vengeance? What if revenge did not fill the void left by their violence, but instead carved out something darker inside her soul? Despite these fears, Cass felt a pull toward her mission. Each encounter with the gang members fed a burgeoning resolve that complicated her emotional landscape. She wanted to reclaim what had been taken from her, not only safety but also the agency to dictate her own life. Yet every act of violence carried with it a potential price, a toll that might strip away parts of who she once was. Cass often caught herself staring into the distance, contemplating whether there was a line she should not cross, a boundary that separated justice from retribution. The need for closure battled with an innate desire for redemption. Could avenging the death of an innocent man lead to her own salvation, or would it merely deepen the scars etched upon her heart? As she navigated through this inner turmoil, Cass knew one thing: there was no turning back from this path once chosen. The Blackthorn Gang had unleashed a storm within her, a tempest filled with rage and sorrow, and now it was up to her to decide how to harness that power without losing herself in its wake. In moments of stillness, when fear threatened to overwhelm her resolve, Cass clung tightly to the memory of the stagecoach driver's face, the man whose life had been cut short by their greed. This reminder grounded her, sharpening her purpose while also reminding her that vengeance alone could not define who she was meant to be. She would seek justice for him and others like him while wrestling with the question lingering just beneath the surface. Would this journey ultimately free or imprison her? Only time would tell as she prepared to take on Cole and beyond, ready to confront both external foes and internal demons alike. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the barren landscape as Cass Whitaker prepared for the climax of her journey. The final remnants of the Blackthorn Gang had gathered at an old, decrepit cabin, a place thick with memories and danger. After weeks of tracking and planning, Cass felt a surge of emotions coursing through her: anger, determination, and a hint of fear. This was it, the moment she had fought for, and she was ready to channel every ounce of her being into this decisive showdown. Crouched behind a cluster of boulders, Cass steadied her breathing and focused her mind. She could hear their raucous laughter filtering through the cracks in the wooden walls, their confidence an unsettling reminder of how they had shattered her life. Gideon Blackthorn was among them, his voice a low growl that carried authority, a stark contrast to the fragile girl who had once cowered under a tarp. But Cass was no longer that person. She had transformed into a woman forged by pain and hardened by purpose. As twilight settled around her, she slipped closer to the cabin's entrance, each step measured and calculated. Memories flooded back, images of the stagecoach driver's lifeless body and the faces of those who had robbed her not only of gold but of innocence. With renewed fervor, she gripped the stolen revolver tightly, its weight reassuring against her palm. This weapon was more than just steel. It was a symbol of her resolve and a tool for reclaiming justice. At last, she positioned herself near the doorway, listening intently. When one of the gang members stepped outside for a breath of fresh air, an unsuspecting look on his face, Cass sprang into action. The surprise in his eyes was quickly replaced by terror as she leveled her revolver at him, forcing him to his knees and demanding information about his comrades inside. Her voice cracked like thunder against the stillness as she demanded answers. The chaos erupted when Gideon and the rest came rushing out, eyes wide with shock. "What's going on here?" he barked, but he wouldn't have time to react before Cass pulled back the hammer of her revolver and aimed it directly at him. Every ounce of fear drained away, her anger fused with clarity as she faced the man who had created this nightmare. "Your reign ends here," she declared, each word heavy with finality. The gang members hesitated, unsure whether to charge or negotiate, but Cass felt empowered, fueled by every wrong done to her and others like the driver. This was not just about ending their lives, it was about reclaiming her power. In that frantic moment, everything crystallized, the thrill of vengeance mixed with a deeper yearning for freedom from fear's grip. Cass knew this confrontation would shape her future forever. The outcome would redefine who she was meant to be. As she stood unwavering amidst uncertainty, she channeled all her pent-up emotions into that single moment, ready to unleash justice for herself and anyone wronged by the Blackthorn Gang. With adrenaline surging through her veins, Cass squeezed the trigger, releasing not only a bullet but also years of pain and sorrow in one decisive act, a testament to her evolution from witness to avenger. The world around her might never be the same again, but in this instant she embraced her true identity, a force fierce enough to confront whatever darkness lay ahead. The dust settled in the aftermath of the confrontation, leaving Cass Whitaker standing amidst the quiet remnants of chaos. She had confronted Gideon Blackthorn and the last members of the Blackthorn Gang, unleashing her pain and vengeance in a decisive act that had changed everything. As she lowered her revolver, the weight of what she had done began to wash over her, mingling triumph with an unexpected emptiness. In the stillness that followed, Cass felt an unsettling mix of relief and sorrow. The thrill of revenge that had once burned so bright began to flicker as she confronted the reality of her actions. She had sought retribution for the innocent life taken, the stagecoach driver whose face haunted her thoughts. But now, as she surveyed the scene, she grappled with a troubling question. Had she truly found justice, or merely satisfied a thirst for blood? The cabin stood silent now, its walls bearing witness to both her fury and resolve. Yet as Cass looked at the lifeless bodies strewn about, the remnants of those who had caused her so much pain, she felt a pang of regret. Each man represented not just an enemy, but a choice she had made to embrace violence over compassion. Vengeance had empowered her but also cast a shadow on her soul. The line between justice and brutality had blurred in those pivotal moments. As she stepped outside into the fading light, Cass was met with the vast expanse of the desert, both beautiful and desolate. It mirrored her own internal landscape, though she had vanquished her foes and emptiness lingered where satisfaction should have been. She realized that vengeance alone could not fill the void left by loss, it could only momentarily mask it. In this newfound clarity, Cass began to reflect on what she truly wanted. Yes, she had reclaimed her agency. Yes, she had avenged a wrongful death. But in doing so, she also recognized that healing would require more than retaliation. It would demand understanding herself beyond anger and forging a path toward forgiveness, not for them but for herself. With each step away from the cabin, Cass resolved to honor the memory of those lost, not just by seeking vengeance but by striving for something greater. She would channel her experiences into rebuilding not only herself, but also a future where fear did not dictate her choices. As twilight deepened into night, Cass felt a flicker of hope ignite within her, a desire to forge a new identity rooted in resilience rather than revenge. She understood now that true strength lay not in becoming an executioner, but in embracing vulnerability and compassion amid hardship. Though shadows lingered in her heart from what she had done, they would serve as reminders to guide her forward. The journey ahead would not be easy, but it was one she was determined to undertake, transforming from an avenger into a survivor ready to reclaim life on her own terms. And as she wandered beneath the starlit sky, Cass Whitaker embraced the promise of renewal amidst the echoes of her past. As Cass Whitaker walked away from the remnants of the confrontation, the weight of her actions pressed heavily on her shoulders. The desert stretched out before her, vast and empty, mirroring the tumult of emotions swirling within. She had embarked on a path of vengeance, believing it would restore her sense of justice and balance that had been shattered by the Blackthorn Gang. Yet as she stepped into the twilight, she found herself wrestling with an unsettling realization. Vengeance had not provided the solace she sought. The images of the men she had confronted lingered in her mind, each face a reminder of how far she had strayed from the girl who once cowered beneath a tarp in fear. Yes, she had avenged the brutal death of the stagecoach driver, but at what cost? The thrill of pulling the trigger had been quickly overshadowed by a profound emptiness that now echoed in her heart. She questioned whether revenge had truly been an act of justice or merely a cycle of violence that would ultimately consume her. With each step across the arid sand, Cass pondered the difference between justice and vengeance. Was it enough to make those who wronged her pay for their actions, or did true justice require compassion and understanding? The tales she had grown up hearing about heroes and villains began to shift in her mind. Perhaps there was more to being courageous than simply wielding a gun. The real challenge was learning to navigate the complexities of human experience, embracing both the darkness and light that dwelled within her. Cass recognized that healing would require more than just an end to her enemies. It demanded that she forgive herself for her choices and confront the pain instead of burying it under layers of anger. As she continued her journey, she resolved to honor those lost, not through bloodshed but by reclaiming her life with intention and purpose. She would channel the energy spent on vengeance into creating a future grounded in resilience. The stars began to twinkle against the darkening sky, reminding Cass of the beauty that still existed in the world amidst chaos. As she breathed in the cool evening air, she felt a flicker of hope sparking within, a desire to forge connections rather than sever them. She would not allow herself to be defined by her past or overshadowed by violent impulses. Instead, Cass aimed to walk a path illuminated by compassion and understanding. What lay ahead was uncertain, but she embraced it with open arms, ready to confront whatever challenges awaited her. Cass Whitaker had emerged from a storm of turmoil, recognizing that true strength comes not from taking lives, but from rebuilding one's own after loss. Determined and resolute, she turned her back on the violent past and stepped boldly into a future where she could seek justice in ways that echoed with humanity, an endeavor ultimately more rewarding than mere revenge could ever offer.